Oh, somebody asked me the other day about my toolboxes if there was a rail for metric. Yes. The ones painted black, that's all metric stuff. See on the back, your yellow is American and your black is metric. So yes, they do color code it. So here she is. Sure wish they'd have made it so you could have taken that gear out without removing all this stuff. There's all your timing gears. Looks like the crankshaft had a hydro seal on it. So we'll have to get that off and put a new hydro seal on it. But we've also got broken exhaust manifold, and I think we got some leaking in here between the turbine and the turbo housing. This is a custom turbo that I had Jim Blaylock build me, oh good grief, 2005, 2006, somewhere in there, 10, 15 years. Anyway, it's got a 50 thousandths bigger compressor wheel in it. So maybe we'll have to send that off to Jim and have him have a look-see at it and go through it. It's been on there a long time. So I remember I told you we have this job. It's a government facility. Anyway, we can have no oil leaks. So we needed to fix this timing issue. Looks like we need a new ground cable. Fix the leaky exhaust manifold while we're here. Go through the turbo. The starter was leaking oil. And then we'll probably put, it's either the output shaft seal that was leaking, or it's the rubber seal in here coming between the shims that are under this bearing cage for the output on the tranny. There's not a drop leaking off of it right now. And suction lines, probably replace those, get new. Well, those got the good clamps on them. We've got a leak going on here on the this is the return line out of the cooler for the transmission. We'll probably replace that along with the supply one here. The ends were looking wet. Other than that, we really don't have any leaks on here. So this was the only way to repair this, was to take it out of the machine. It's just, it's so nice to just bring this whole power pack assembly in the shop. So this is a sub-assembly. See the frame rails there. And there's the radiator and the hard nose panels, top tank. That all comes off. You can pull the transmission off separate if you want. We have some brackets we bolt on here to the bell housing that come over and sit on this, so that when we want to just remove the tranny and leave the engine in the subframe, that's what we do. Okay, that is what they call a sleeve metering fuel system. Pretty simple. They're fairly dependable fuel systems. This is your timing gear, just it's a press fit onto that. When you bolt it up, what you do is you put timing bolt in the flywheel on the engine and the timing pin in the fuel system here, bolt it up, you're timed and good to go. But we've got some leaking going on here. We've never been able to figure out why this is leaking. We don't know whether it's coming out from under the pumps or it's fuel lines or what's going on. So we've got to diagnose that and fix that, mostly just because it's a fire hazard. I mean, you're right there by the exhaust manifold. and you're running fuel all over. So always stuff to fix. This is the front motor mount. It sits in rubber. There's the other half of the seal in there, crank seal. Okay, this is the starter out of that 3306 Power Pack over there, and it's been doing some serious leaking here, and I'm pretty sure I know what it is. It's these rubber plugs that go in these holes where there isn't any bolts, and you can clock this nose cone whichever way you need to for this starter to fit whatever engine application you have. This starter was rebuilt not long ago. But you can see rubber products in this country are really suffering from quality. So we need to replace that. There's a seal under this. I'll replace that. A seal in here that keeps the oil out of the inside, and a seal on this pin. These are a couple of 24-volt Delco starters. This one's out of a 3306. It's got the short nose cone. This is the nose cone you'll see in 99% of all other starter applications. This is the long nose cone. This is a CAT application for the 1693, D343, D346, and a bunch of other CAT applications that have the accessory drive housing on the back of the motor. These are wet starters, therefore they have a lip seal in here to keep the oil from going inside the armature, and that's why you need really good rubber products to seal them up. You need stuff that lasts, not this stuff made in China. You need made in the USA. I like seeing stickers on products like that, and I try to buy made in America stuff. You can't always get it, but I always ask for it. Okay, so I got the end housing off, and the first thing you notice is we're good and dry in here. There's no oil. So that seal was working. The one up here surely wasn't. It was letting all kinds of junk in. But you know, every time I put something in this vise, I'm just in awe. Dave Anderson sent me this vise. He repainted this thing and sent it to me, which I'm just flabbergasted, and I absolutely love this vise, Dave. This is the toughest vise I've ever had. It's an oldie, but man, it's a goodie. Thanks, Dave. Every time I put that in there, I think of you. But this is the housing off the end of it here. This is your starter drive, and this is how you adjust your pinion. You've got to have a certain amount of distance between this and the end of the housing. That's critical. Okay, I got it tore apart, and the seals are pretty shot. This pin literally fell out. The seals were so flat and hard they weren't doing a thing, but I want to show you this pin's shot. And see, it rides in here on the shift fork, and it's been dang hanging there so long it's wore it out, the pin. Now that's a new shift fork, but the pin should have been replaced, so we'll get a new pin. This is the boot, and in order to get that off, you have to disassemble this whole plunger assembly, which means I'm going to have to readjust the pinion to nose cone clearance, and I'll show you all that when I get it together. But I've got to go get seals so I can put her back together. Just when you think winter's going to let up, it just comes right back at night. We got to get up early in the morning, drive clear to Idaho Falls for some OSHA training. It's going to be slow going. Okay, finally got the starter back together, got my parts. We've been in OSHA training for a couple of days. That was a blast. But what I've done is we can have absolutely no leaks, and these starters will leak on these rear engines because they're wet starters. They're inside the converter housing. When you're going down steep hills, you got oil that runs in here. So I have siliconed the pin that goes through the shift fork, and I've also siliconed this entire rubber to keep the sunshine off of it. Make sure we have zero leaks there. I've put silicone behind this where that seal is. This is the pin that came out of there. The guys that rebuilt the starter last time put that back in. I don't know why, but if you buy the pin from Cat, it comes with the O-rings on it and everything. All right, these are my starter balls. These are the rubber balls. You need 6 of them. They go inside these holes here where there's no bolts to keep the oil from running out. These fit really well. These are Caterpillar ones. I don't know what the old ones were, but they didn't seal very well. So I got to get those in. And the next thing I got to do is run the starter and adjust this when it runs to get the proper clearance between the pinion and the end of the housing. And the only way to do that is to engage the starter. So I got to do that next. And this is my battery testing deal set up. I keep these cables around so that when we build a power pack for rear engine, we can start them in the shop and test them. I don't always have a new set of batteries laying around. I just happen to have these when it seems like every year my Cat dealer has a battery sale around October, and they give you like 25% off batteries or something, 10%, whatever it is. So anyway, we make sure that we always have a set of these great big 8Ds around in case we need them. You just never know. Okay, to check your pinion clearance and make the solenoid pull the starting gear in, this is how you want to hook it up, and this is the only way you want to do it. Now, you can opt to put your ground cable, bolt it to this, or you can just run this wire down to the ground terminal on the battery and then run a jumper from here to here and touch it. And I'll explain why that does what it does, but I want to show you. I'm going to touch the hot wire with the solenoid switch wire. And that's how you tell that the solenoid is actually working. There's 2 circuits in the solenoid. There's a pull-in coil and a hold-in coil. And so if you're not activating both of those, it's not going to kick it out like that. If you just hook it up with the hot here and you don't run a jumper from this terminal down to this terminal on here, what will happen is you'll have to push on this to help it pull it in and suck it in. So you're not utilizing both pull in and hold in coils at the same time. So that's how you do it. Now you notice I unhooked this. I didn't want that interfering with anything. Yeah, I could have left it on, but I took it off. I'm going to clean this all up and everything, make sure we got a good connection there anyway. Okay, so when you do this is kind of hard holding a phone, but after you pull it in like this, you're going to reach down here. There, push the pinion back forward like that. Then you're going to measure this distance. So to adjust your clearance, if you want more clearance, you're going to want to unscrew this nut. But this is a nylock nut, and without the solenoid engaged, you're not going to be able to turn this. All it's going to do is turn the shaft. So in order to make your adjustment, you re-engage the solenoid, then put your socket and ratchet on there and turn it. So I am sitting at 320 thousandths. I really need 40 more thousandths. But the problem is I am right at the end of the threads here, and I do not want to wind that nylock nut off those threads. Otherwise, that nut could come off, and then you got real problems. So I'm just going to stay with the 320. I might be able to get a little bit more, but now the other thing I did measure was the distance from here to the face of the starter ring gear. And I've got good clearance here. I got probably 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch. So I've got good clearance. And that's one other thing you want to check. You want to verify that you got good clearance here so these teeth don't grind on the flywheel the whole time. And I think one of the reasons that this is such a critical clearance is if every time you engage this, it's coming clear out here and slamming the end of this nose cone. Now this is spring loaded in there. Well, excuse me, the gear will turn, this won't. So if you're not adjusted correctly, this is going to come back and it's going to really slam this. And you'll notice on my motor grader, that one time in that video called 14G starter removal with a backhoe, this whole housing was broke off here. This whole thing broke off and was laying inside the housing and being ground to death by the teeth on the starter gear, ring gear. So it's important this doesn't come clear back and slam the end of this housing constantly, because if you're doing that, you could break this off. All right, now we're going to test it, run it, see how she goes. So all I got to do is touch this wire right here and hang on to your butts. Come on, dude. There we go. Okay, you saw how that pops out of there, and it doesn't come clear to here, it comes close. So if you don't have this adjusted right and that thing's slamming against this, it's going to break this off. So if you ever have somebody work on your starters, it's critical they know what they're doing and they set that. Now, when I had these big starters, these long nose cone buggers done up at Idaho Falls, they put them on a machine and they test them for torque and everything, and they had to go build a special spacer to make those long nose cone ones work, which I really appreciated. They didn't cut any corners. They made sure they were able to torque test them and adjust them, so they did a really good job. Okay, this is the magnetic filter out of the transmission, and this is pretty normal to see this fuzz on the magnets. As long as we don't see any big chunks of iron, we're good. So Matt's doing that, and then he's also put a new seal on the output shaft. This is the output shaft, and you can see this is where we had it metallized last time, and we were getting some leakage. And we think it was from this O-ring right here. It got rolled when it got put on, and it had a bad spot in it. So one more oil leak fixed. All right, that's the output shaft on the transmission. And I've never seen a 637 rear that didn't leak there. That's under oil, so there's just no way that it's not gonna leak a little bit. So we're just trying to control things. We can't have constant drips. So we put new hoses on the oil cooler, the supply and the return, top and bottom. These hoses, this one you have to get from Cat. My dealer cannot build it because of this crazy thing they put on there. But anyway, we're moving along and we're getting things sealed up. We're going to do everything we can to keep it from leaking. Okay, that's the transmission hydraulic tank reservoir for the tranny. This is the magnetic filter. That's where it goes inside there. And this is an environmental drain. They had these way back when. These are awesome to drain things. But we've got a leak going on here, and we think it's possibly a damaged seat on this. Yep, it is. So we need to do something about that, clean it up. We'll probably put it back in, and we may put a plug in here. This is pipe plug. and then we could stop any leaking from happening there. Okay, this is the accessory drive on the front, and Jake's got the spacer plate put back on. He's going to have to hang the injection pump and then put the gear on that so he can assemble the cam drive and this idler gear. And then he'll get the front cover on and get that sealed up and put that all back together, and get the oil pan, actual oil pump and the oil pan back on. Okay, the starter runs inside this housing, and the converter is right there in that section. And so part of the leakage from the converter that is inside the flywheel housing has to drain out this hose and down to the sump, where it's picked back up by the oil pump and run back up in the tank. And so that's one of the reasons why those starters will leak, is when you get going downhill really steep and you get a steep angle on it, that oil runs up in the starter and stays there. So if you got bad seals, it's going to find its way out. Okay, Matt's got the output shaft installed back in. One other place they can leak, under that cap right there is an O-ring, and that stops the oil from coming down through the splines. And sometimes I'll take those and I'll just cremate it full of silicone and put it on. Because if the splines are worn at all, and that output shaft rocks back and forth on the splines, then it will constantly work on the O-ring, and then over time it'll start to leak. So silicone's your friend, man. Okay, that's the transmission hydraulic tank drain, and this valve is steel, but the drain housing is brass, and Matt has taken this and put it on the drill press and polished it the best he can. As you can see, it's still got a couple of owies in it, and it's right where it's going to seal. But you could put your mouth on the other end and blow through it. That's how bad it leaked. So the inside of it, the seat there, was pretty messed up. So we just took a small stone and ran it down in there and cleaned that up. I think this is $28 from Cat, and this is $58. But it looks to me like at some time they must have had a failure, and they had a bunch of big pieces of junk in there, and they tightened it down and damaged the seat. Want to give a shout out to the guys that work at the Cat warehouses that ship old pay dirt, all of these parts. This is a tag that comes on my parts. This came out of Spokane. This is my dealer's identification, H511. Hot, that means it's an emergency order. I could have got these on a stock order, but I needed them right away. And the freight, like I said, the freight is really super reasonable. So I just want to give a shout out to Jacob. He works at the Morton facility. That is a big warehouse. I saw a video this morning where the CFO at Cat went and visited the warehouse, and they showed him how it worked, which I kind of thought was funny that the CFO had never been to the warehouse. But I don't know, maybe he had, maybe they just did it for this video. But they can literally pick parts. The aisles are like that far apart, and they've got deals that go down a track and go up and pick the part and bring it back, or I assume that stocks the shelf the same way. Anyway, it makes them really super efficient, and that's why I appreciate these guys that pick the parts and send them to me. They do an awesome job, and there's nobody that has a part system like Cat. And again, that's why I run Cat. I can get parts, and I can get them now. So anyway, thank you guys for filling my orders. Hey, good Friday evening to you, everybody. Want to introduce you to some more of my awesome subscribers. Want to start with Gary Johnson from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Shannon, he's from Michigan. Justin from Berwick, Maine. And Benjamin Corelli, he's from Gastonia, North Carolina, but he was originally from Canberra, Australia, along with Elliot, who's also from Canberra, Australia. Thank you to my Australian and US subscribers. Want to talk about some of my Canadian subscribers. Kelly Carter, he's from New Brunswick, Canada. And Alexander Niem, I hope I pronounced that correct, Alexander. He's from New Liskeard, Ontario. Anyway, he's 17 years old and he overhauls truck engines. That's awesome. Says he loves watching the Adept Ape and Jpaydirt. So keep up the good work, Alexander, and thank you for subscribing to Jpaydirt. Don't forget to go to Amazon to get your Old Kenny coloring book, and to jpaydirt.com to get your calendars in Anderson hats or Old Kenny hats if you'd like them. There's a link below, jpaydirt.com. Also to this week's video, a little bit short. Spent 2 days in OSHA training. We're working on the 3306. It took me forever to get that starter done. It's ridiculous. Jake is going to be reassembling the 3306 here this week, and you'll get to see that, and we'll get working on some other stuff. So I'm really super busy. A lot of training. Got another 4.5 hour training to go to on the 12th. Got to go get a hearing test and a physical on the 14th. I'm going to be hustling to get to this job, so stay with me. Oh, I want you to notice too on the below the whiteboard here, I finally got going here and got these other watch fobs hung up. I had a subscriber send all these to me. If I remember correctly, it was you, wasn't it, Alf? Anyway, got tons of cool cat watch fobs on here, man. That's awesome. Thank you very much. So I got a calendar from Thomas Gant. He works at the Packard dealership in New Zealand. Looks like they service Auckland, Hamilton, Rotorua, is it Rotorua? Palmerston, and Christchurch. Anyway, this is a high dollar calendar. This is really nice. Very nice pictures, really cool pictures in here. And he said in October, the October truck is one of my subscribers. These are interesting trucks. Do they run these in Australia too, or is this just a New Zealand thing with the double steer axles? That'd be cool to have those over here. Anyway, they sell the Packard, the KW stuff. These are cool. I love these cab overs. We don't have them here anymore. And then they sell the DAF. Who is DAF? Who makes that? DAF. At least it's not DEF, but it probably has DEF in it. It's a DAF with DEF. So where's October here? Here we are. October. I think I have pictures of a truck like this or this one. Somebody sent me for truck time. I need to get back to doing that. But I love this picture here. This reminds me of, remember the job I was doing out on the desert for the BLM. This has got to be a volcano. I could tell by looking at it. This used to be a volcano. Anyway, thanks for sending that to me, Thomas. He sent me a letter. It starts out Kia ora. Not sure what that word means. Kia ora. I don't know. Tell me what that means. He says, I write from Little New Zealand, where my father and self blast the diesel rumble of Jpaydirt into the city streets of Auckland. Always a highlight for me comes when wrench time with Kenny, as I am a diesel mechanic for the NZ distributor for Packard trucks. We sell and support Austrian built Kenworths and DAF trucks. So when the company calendar was out, there was only one man with true Kenny that came to mind. Cannot wait to see what 2019 brings to the channel, and wish you the best, Thomas Gant. P.S. I believe that October's truck is another one of your Kiwi subscribers. That's awesome. Thomas, thank you very much for that. That is a nice calendar, a really nice calendar. That's even better than Jpaydirt calendars. That's got to be a $20 calendar. That is cool. Thank you. Hey, I got a long-time subscriber I'm a little worried about. He had some health problems in the past. I have not heard from you, Jim. Leah. Jim is in Albuquerque. Get a hold of me. Let me know how you are.